Hi, everyone.
Hi, welcome back to the Neogenian Oculus. If you're not familiar with us, my name is Philip Shope, and this is my content co-creator, Susan Mitchell. You haven't seen us for a couple weeks because we've had just a little bit of a short break. We had some technical difficulties and some other stuff going on. So it's nice to see everybody again, and we hope that we will be able to get back to our regular stream uh, structure schedule. So also this is the end of the month. So after this stream, we are going to have a members only stream, right?
Yep. Yep. I've
And we'll,
already
we'll be
set
talking
that up.
about some other fun stuff there. So today we're going to be talking about our connection to the dead. Are we connected to the dead? So death has been a really popular topic, especially with you guys. The audience has really enjoyed talking about that. And we've done a few streams about death, more specifically about grief, struggle, stuff like that. But today we're going to specifically be talking about, are we connected to the dead?
Yeah. This is something that I'm sure you've been asked this too, Philip.
Yeah.
I know I get asked this. My mother asks me this all the time. And I think this is something people think about a lot is two points basically is on thinking about our loved ones. Are they still there? And where did they go? Like, where are they right now? What's happening?
I think those are fascinating questions to ponder
Yeah.
because, growing up, even as a religious person, I thought about that. And, you're told different stories about where your soul will go or what will happen after you die. But for a lot of people who aren't religious or even people who are religious, they think, is that really right? What exactly happens during that process?
Yeah, and we're going to talk about those things. And this again, these questions are things that come up just watching like Morg's live streams
Yeah.
and lots of videos out there. This is something that people really want to know, and it's very understandable.
And also, speaking of Morg, thank you, Morg, for the super chat. It says, looking forward to the topic. And thank you for being here. And thank you, everybody, for being here. By the way, we really appreciate it if you guys are willing to like this video. We appreciate all of your comments. We'll try and jump in and look at your comments sporadically throughout the live stream. And also, thank you for sharing. And thank you to Jan and Mark and Elise for moderating for us if you're here. We'll probably see you guys jump in. So this is actually really exciting. I know it's a topic that I'm excited about, and me and Susan had a lot of great conversations just preparing for this stream.
Yeah, as
So
we always do.
we always do, and we thought it would be important to say that we always have struggles with loss and grief. We've talked about that a lot before on our live streams, and we're not trying to diminish those aspects, but also we are looking at this topic because we want to have a new understanding of death from the Neogenian perspective. For anybody who's not familiar with our channel, we are Neogenian. Our channel is kind of a hub for what it's like to live as a Neogenian and the Neogenian way of life, and looking at the general principles of of Neogenianism.
And
And so, uh, go ahead.
I was just going to say a lot of people come over to us from Morg's channel,
Yeah,
obviously, because Morg is always promoting us as sort of a Neogenian community for people who are interested in what Morg talks about, but also specifically having to do with the Neogenian content that Morg talks
right.
about. So that's how we're kind of establishing ourselves as a place where people can come who are specifically interested in how to what is the Neogenian system and how to
Yeah.
live as a Neogenian.
And
And
we're hoping to make some more videos on all of those concepts for you guys. Our schedule has just been busy. There's been some things going on in the background in terms of projects,
yeah,
which will be coming out soon. But you guys can look forward to that. And also, thank you to Renaissance Fairy for the super chat. Says, when my mom was in the hospital, she saw my brother who had passed away. She told me he stayed a few days. Plus, she saw me when I was younger and was talking to me. I was at home at the time. We've been talking about my near death experience. And that's absolutely true. There's so much phenomena that happens and surrounds death, you know, uh, especially when people are near death. There's so much different psychological phenomena that happens that's really, really interesting and that we like talking about. And thank you for sharing that. And I know you've shared your story of your near death experience before. And
yeah.
also,
Can we just
Joanna has been a member for 27 months. Thank you, says, hi, I'm glad to see everyone. Interesting topic. And hi,
yeah,
Jan.
hi, Jan.
I see Jan just popped in.
For people who don't know, weren't around when Renaissance Fairy came on to one of our members only streams and talked about her near death experience, please, if you're a member of the channel, go and watch that episode. It was very interesting. And I think
Yeah.
that just ties back into, hi, Sinfully Cerebral. Lee, it's nice to see you. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yeah.
I think this ties back to the questions people have about the connection to the dead, which is, again, what our main topic is. And the questions of what's going on when people have near death experiences. What happens in terms of people who have different religious beliefs, like what about people who have psychological experiences, or
Speaking of religious beliefs, this weekend happens to be Easter, right? And many people around the globe have a connection to the ultimate dead, Jesus himself, who resurrected from the dead, allegedly, in the story. Yeah. Hello, Lisa Zawacki, member for 21 months. Nice to see you. And also, if you guys do want to go back and look at Ren's story in our members only stream, you need to become a member. It's not a lot. I think it comes out to $25 a year. It's like $2 a month or something like that. Yeah, we're definitely not getting rich off of that. Yeah. It's for you guys to have a little extra perk. So, we really were excited to have this topic because death has been, and probably always will be, one of the biggest topics of interest to humanity. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen when they die. A lot of people are afraid of knowing what's going to happen or not knowing what's going to happen when they die. So we want to look at it from a new lens, because when we better or have a better understanding of the true nature of existence, how reality operates, we can kind of try and formulate a better picture of the process that we as a Zeta or a mind or a soul goes through, and how we perceive that function of what we call death, that function in the cycle.
So let's kind of start with some history of the way people look at death and deal with
because there's a lot of interesting stuff throughout history surrounding death. And also, really quick, thank you, Becca, member for 12 months, says, so glad to be here. We're glad that you're here as well, and we're glad that everybody is here.
We're going to try to say hi to everybody and read comments, but we're kind of reserving more of the conversation for the members stream, because we have a lot we do want to talk about tonight.
Yeah. And we have a couple fun things for the members only stream as well.
That we realize we probably won't have time for tonight. So things involving ghosts and, just a little bit of, Ouija boards and stuff like that. Okay,
but in terms of the history,
let's talk about you can
look back as far into history as you can search, and you will always find that humanity has had funerals or some form of reverence for the dead. You can look at almost any culture, any part of the globe, and you will always find some kind of ritual or ceremony or some kind of process involving the dead or the end of life. A lot of people, it's a very popular topic, is the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians with their mummification. And of course, there's also other cultures that mummified their dead as well. Yeah. But it's just so elaborate, and seeing all of the preparations that the Egyptians did for their loved ones and their pharaohs. Usually it was probably the more rich people, the elite, that got mummified in more exotic or you know what I'm trying to say, more extravagant ways. But you see throughout history and throughout all of these different cultures that people worshipped deities, and like Jesus with Christianity, hoping for a reunion with their loved ones in the afterlife. And we also talked about, Susan and I talked about, that kind of ties people to religion out of fear.
Yeah, I think that the big point probably for most people who are looking for some connection with the dead, is from comfort. I think comfort is probably the number one issue, because they will like a religion or a belief system or something,
Yeah.
because it gives them this reassurance that the people they loved are going to be reunited with them, and that they will
Yeah.
spend forever together. And there's some very interesting implications to thinking about that when it comes to knowing the Neogenian material, Neogenian truth. And we're going to get to that more
Yeah.
toward the end. And this was something that Philip and I were specifically talking about the other day. If you logically think through some steps, you arrive at some very interesting conclusions. So we'll
Yeah.
get to that. But
And
let's.
also, when I talked about being tied to religion out of fear, that ties into, the worshiping the deities and stuff, because a lot of people, they want to be in heaven or whatever in the afterlife with their loved ones. And so I think a large part of it also is, a very emotional faith bond to the religion. And, they don't want to go to hell and be on their own. And, obviously
Yeah.
the whole torture aspect of it. But it goes exactly with what Susan was saying, that desire for comfort. And, the idea of the eternal soul that is our loved one, a lot of people think of it as a soul. And of course, our understanding, the Neogenian understanding, is that each of us is an eternal Zeta. We were not created and we will have no end. So we have always existed. But throughout history, you also have stories of our ancestors watching down on us. And this was something that Susan and I talked a lot about. There's Native Americans and a lot of Asian cultures have this, where they revere the ancestors. And Susan and I spent a little bit of time talking about the ego of our loved one watching down on us. And if we are an eternal Zeta living multiple lifetimes, would that be troublesome for the Zedic cycle to have that part of the ego connected to this lifetime?
Yeah. So, that was the question. I mean, I live here in my parents' house. My dad has passed, and his photo is just over there on a bookshelf. And he's just constantly always looking over me. And my mother is always asking me again, where is he and what's happening? And I explain it to her every single time. She's very much a materialist, so has a very difficult time understanding that she just can't. She has a really hard time with the Neogenian material, which is too bad, because when people say they find comfort in religion, my mom's not religious, but they find comfort in religion. There is a particular kind of comfort that you get from the Neogenian perspective. It's not this warm fuzzy kind of comfort. It's more a comfort from having an understanding of what's happening in reality. Yeah. So let's talk about this. Having a loved one kind of watching over you, and people, I feel my dad, but I personally think that that's me sensing my own connection to him in myself, as opposed to my dad, who, with his one avatar ego lifetime that he had as my father here, actually watching over me. So think about it for a minute. If people expect their, grandma and, sister, whatever, whoever, to be watching over you after they've passed, what does that mean about all the lifetimes that we've lived? And also think about yourself, all your previous incarnations or relocalizations or localizations. Are you, as a whole Zeta, as your entire being, looking over everybody?
See, that was my question. So I sort of wonder if the connection is more on our side than on the side of the Zeta or the loved one that passed away. Yeah. Because if you have the understanding that a Zeta will live multiple life cycles, I almost feel like it would be too much for a Zeta to have an attempt to keep some sort of connection to each of those previous lifetimes, and have some form of their energy remain there. I'm not saying it's not possible. Right. We don't know. But to me, it seems like it would be a little bit of a hindrance to the progress of that Zeta in their evolutionary progress.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about this quite a bit more towards the end when we're getting into the Neogenian aspects of all of this when we kind of wrap it up. But Susan and I sort of questioned ourselves when we were talking about this of, is it almost a little bit selfish to want to keep them and not have them go through their evolutionary process?
Yeah, and there's two components here, because I just noticed that, hi Charlotte. Charlotte came in and said, I love this topic. We have evidence that ghosts were a common belief as early as 50,000 BC, which is fascinating, and I'd like to hear more about that. But I think, since we don't know exactly, we can't say for sure that any of the things that people say might be happening are actually happening. I think that it's very possible that it's part, like you said, like it's part of you representing the loved one, like that you're sensing them because you love them, you think about them all the time.
Yeah.
But there is something I've always thought about as well, is there some sort of a remnant of like an echo of the personality of a person, so that it's not the Zeta itself being stuck here.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like an echo. And is that something that people think of as a ghost? That's just been something that I've thought of.
It could be.
It's not I wouldn't, like you said, I wouldn't want my father to sort of be hanging around here. I mean,
yeah,
that makes no sense to me as a Zeta.
And that's sort of what I meant with the is it selfish aspect of wanting to keep them,
exactly,
for all time, or for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. And I mean, as a Zeta, the particular avatar ego that I knew my dad as, I mean, he's so much more than that, and has other experiences to go through. Now, do I think, and this is, me, do I think that we relocalize with people, with the Zetas that we have encountered before? I personally do think that. I don't mean everybody all the time. I think there's lots of people that you interact with that move on elsewhere, but you know how you feel sometimes when you meet someone that you have experienced
that really strong bond.
Yeah. So that was just another thought that I had about that we can experience lifetimes together. That just not in the same. It's not, your dad isn't always going to be your dad. Maybe you're the dad, and maybe I'm the dad, and he's the child. So, but I think that we can do that as a group together.
Yeah. And then I also think about, we're going to get into kind of some fun and interesting ideas of connecting with the dead. You have some more strange options that, historically may not have been strange at the time. But I mentioned to you the Victorian era funeral photos, back in those, mid 1800s kind of Victorian era, they would prop up their dead loved ones after they had passed away and take photos of them, making them look as realistic as possible so that they could hold on to that photo, kind of like a last little bit of life that they get out of that. And even though the person is not there anymore, it's an empty avatar, they tried making them look as lifelike as possible.
One of the things that I wondered about that is cameras were fairly new at that time, right? But it wasn't so common to have like lots and lots of photos during life. So it's possible that people did this because it was their only chance to preserve a photo of that person. I mean,
and even before cameras, we didn't mention this before the live stream, but death masks. When people would do the death masks as somebody had died or was dying to preserve their face, which is really cool. You can see a lot of them in museums. And they're very interesting. They're a little spooky, but it's cool that somebody had that idea to preserve the visage of someone who had passed away. And then you also have an ongoing connection that people are looking for, and you see that through, again, in the Victorian era, you saw a lot of seances at that time period, and Ouija became very popular at that time. I mentioned this to Susan. There is an article that we can post on our community board if you guys would like it. But if you look into the history of seances and spiritualism in that time period, surprisingly, there is a deep history of spiritualism at the White House. So, politics aside, this is just in terms of death. In the mid 1800s, spiritualism was very popular. And I know of at least two presidents that had spiritualists or mediums come into the White House to help them connect with their dead loved ones. I believe the first one was James Madison, and the second one was the Lincoln family. So, if you're familiar with history, the Lincolns lost one of their sons. And Mary Todd Lincoln was apparently so inconsolable that they brought in mediums in an attempt to try and comfort her by helping her connect with her dead child. And, that brings in the whole question of frauds and people making money off of this and whatnot. So if you Google spiritualism at the White House, there is a deep history there, and we can probably post that article for you. But
yeah, I can add
in
it.
terms of fake mediums or psychics, on one hand, it's really gross that people would take advantage of grieving people to get their money or con them. But also, I think in some cases it does probably give people some sort of comfort. But Susan, what were you saying about the mediums?
I think that's probably how these psychics rationalize it, taking money from people. They would probably say, but I bring comfort to so many. I personally think that is I think that's really gross, frankly.
Yeah.
And you and I talked
and
about
almost
this.
A little bit manipulative as well.
It is. I don't, because I don't like falsehoods. So,
yeah.
Again, it's preying on people who want comfort. And I would rather have the truth. I would rather seek out what is actually happening in reality. But in terms of the medium issue, just because there are many frauds, and I would caution people to really be careful. If you're watching a show or something for entertainment value, fine, not a problem. I would tend to think that if there are some people with genuine abilities, they're very probably unlikely to take money or want fame from it. They are probably very quiet about it. And
I can't remember that quote, but it's something like, you don't see faith healers in hospitals for the same reason you don't see psychics winning the lottery every week.
Yes.
Also, thank you, Fashida. Thank you for becoming a member.
Yeah. Wave function. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Okay, Charlotte, I noticed that Charlotte made another comment, because I didn't want to bring this up because I didn't know if it was private, but first, let's read one comment. There are caves with Neanderthal remains that contain grave goods, implying that something survives of a human being after death, that it goes back, that it goes somewhere, and that it can come back. That's really interesting, because that's obviously a long time ago. And then I saw Charlotte said, "Oh my God, I just came from a spiritualist camp." And yes, I know that. Charlotte is somebody who I've known for a long time, and posts on Instagram. And Charlotte had been to a spiritualist camp, and of course I was very interested in getting details, because that's along the lines of things I'm very interested in. Again, death, afterlife, all of that. I'm one of the people that finds that very interesting. So of course, with me, I really would want to know, are they genuine? But the idea of all the sort of paraphernalia of like the seance table and all those people getting together, and I find that very interesting, especially sometimes when they can debunk them. But still, I just have always been very fascinated with that particular time period of when.
Speaking of death paraphernalia, let's move on to post-mortem connections with people that we've lost. So after people have died, humanity over the past however many hundreds of years have always had different rituals that they do with the body. So the first one that is the most popular, of course, is having a gravesite or a tombstone. And Susan and I talked about how that can definitely be a comfort for people to have some place to go to or some physical thing to talk to try and connect with their loved ones. You know, yearly people take flowers to their loved ones' graves. They sit
Yeah.
there and they talk to them as if they're still here. And that may be very therapeutic. But there is also some negativities with tombstones, grave sites that Susan and I talked about.
Well, the first thing is that we can't keep burying people the way,
Yeah.
it's just not. We don't have the room, and
Well, it is kind of a waste of land because after people are buried there, you can't do anything with that land ever again.
yeah,
You know, it's
yeah.
it's permanently used up.
Yeah. And so, Philip and I got into a personal discussion of what we would want, and
Hmm.
there's all other alternatives. But it's not so much that thing. It's, I think, the knowledge about how reality operates is such a game changer from the way people have always viewed it, which is the importance of revering this body. For one thing, it's really, there's a lot of focus on not just the avatar, but this particular avatar ego combination identity, right? And I'm not saying that people should not be remembered, that each lifetime is not important, but I think having the overall understanding of this continued process, that you are so much more than just
Hmm.
this one lifetime, lets you let go a little bit about having to have some sort of permanent something. There are other ways now, of course, where you can still have a memento that you, yes, I'm not saying that you should just, nobody should have any trace of them left. I know there are some people
Yeah.
that say that. They're like, I don't
Well, we
want.
were just kind of talking about how, you don't need a super lavish, expensive casket or the most, lavish vault for your casket to go in.
Yeah.
It's a very lucrative business. And we
Yes.
talked about there is a bit of guilt tripping that
Yeah.
happens,
Yeah.
oh, if you really loved your loved one, you'll give them this beautiful send off.
I find that such a waste and so unnecessary. What is necessary really is for the people who are left.
Hmm.
And I think that any kind of expense or money spent should be on the people who are left.
Yeah.
So I mean, and these are personal wishes. I'm not trying
Yeah, we're
to
not saying
tell
what's right or
anybody. Yeah,
wrong.
there's no right or wrong. You can obviously do what you want, but I think having the Neogenian perspective is what helps you to realize that the way you've perceived things, the way people have always perceived it, is
Yeah.
very different once you understand that we are eternal, and there's a
Hmm.
lot more to us, each Zeta, than this particular identity. Then it becomes
And that
more.
that thought process goes along with cremation as well, or keeping the ashes. And a lot of people feel comfort that you still have a piece of your loved one, that
Yeah.
you're still holding on to that, or you have their urn or whatever. But the Neogenian perspective allows us to understand that they're not there. You
Yeah.
have a piece of their physical avatar or the ashes of their avatar,
Yeah.
and it's your emotional connection with that is more prevalent.
I think what the need is that people have is to have something permanent in a
Hmm.
place where they can go. And there is interest. And I mean, I'm one of these people that I love cemeteries. I'm not a complete addict where I need to stop and go through every one, but I do find them fascinating. I have walked through them. I like looking at
Yeah,
old graves. So I'm not
they have a
saying.
different aesthetic.
They do, and there's some very interesting gravestones. It's a whole industry of people who like to go and
Hmm.
look at things. I'm not trying to take that away. I'm just trying to say I don't think we can keep doing that anymore. Again, personal opinion. um
Yeah,
but
and
I
they have
think
all kinds of new stuff now, like the ash jewelry,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
ashes in
So
tattoos, which I'm a little off on, but
skeptical. Yeah, I don't know that I would do that, but I think the point is that people have always wanted a location to go to, where that's where my great 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 whatever is buried,
mhm.
or the family, or but if with the Neogenian perspective, I keep going back to this, it lessens the need for that. You kind of go through an internal process of recognizing that while it can be something that you're personally interested in looking at the past, you no longer need it to be continued into the future. And what you just talked about, there's lots of ways to have like mementos or something that is of that person that can be passed down, right? Doesn't have to be a location you go to. And I think that kind of letting go is something that was very important and will be very important as more and more people become knowledgeable about the Neogenian system, because I think that it's really going to help a lot of people through that process.
And I know our connection with the dead isn't limited to just people either. There's a lot of people that want to keep ashes or mementos from their pets, and that kind of goes into a little bit of the taxidermy thing where, I know some people have their pets stuffed, and which is a little odd to me personally, but some people keep whiskers, or I have a little paw print from my cat and stuff, and pets are really special to us. We go through a different grieving process, but it's still a process of grief because we were so connected to these Zetas that are in a different stage of evolution than we are as humans. But you still have that strong connection, and sometimes it's special to have a piece of that you can keep.
Yeah, some of the things that I know I personally would want to do is I would like to get some jewelry made using ashes. To me, that's so much more important than having a grave site to go to. I have worked through that. Nobody's there at the cemetery. It's just something that people thought they needed to do. And in the past, that was the thing to do, right? We don't need to do that anymore. And I think, as I keep saying, once more and more people understand that, I think things are really going to change, especially because for practical reasons and for environmental reasons, we're running out of the ability to do the other things. I want to see what Charlotte just said. I know about this. Okay, so spiritual camps are towns in which only psychic mediums can live. That's like the one that Charlotte went to. Was one of these, and there are 3 still in existence. Oh, I didn't know there were 2 others that were founded in the 1800s due to the Victorian fascination with spiritualism out of New York. That's where it started, I guess. It was big, that movement, and I very particularly enjoy that period, that time period, and I would love to go to one of them.
It's always interesting looking at death in the past and then thinking about what death will be like or how it will be perceived in the future. So I know a couple live streams ago, we did one on futurism and, all of that kind of stuff. And we talked about artificial intelligence being used. So we'll just kind of talk about this briefly because we mentioned that if you could have some sort of preserved representation of your loved one, it wouldn't actually be your loved one, but it could possibly be used as a connection for therapeutic purposes, if you needed to converse with it or something like that. But that also, on the flip side of that coin, it could be an unhealthy connection where you can't let go and you kind of have that really bothersome connection to something that is not your loved one.
Is this something that you see on a monitor, or is this like a 3D?
I suppose it could be both, like a VR or on a monitor or anything like that.
It was VR. Yeah. Okay, because I read a story. I'm pretty sure that this actually happened, not just something that might happen, of a woman, and I believe she was in Japan, and she'd lost her daughter, and they did this was maybe in a study. I wish I could remember. It was a while ago now, where it was in VR, and she was able to talk to her daughter, and she was, I think, fairly young, the daughter, and it was beneficial for her, for the mother. And I think with proper psychological guidance, is anything important happening?
Oh, I was just reading a comment from Mark.
From Mark. Okay. Hi, Mark. So with the proper psychological guidance, I think as a letting go tool, a tool for helping people to let go, I think it could be very valuable. But
Yeah.
if it became kind of like that mirror of Aristad in Harry Potter, where you
Yeah, I know
just
what you're talking about.
yeah, it's a Harry Potter fan, please, correct me. I think if it becomes that, where that's all you want to do is be in VR conversing with something that is not
Mhm.
your child, that
Because
would
I think
definitely
the
be a
mirror
problem.
showed you what you wanted to see.
Yes, but for Harry, it was his parents, right?
Yeah.
So if it was that kind of a thing where you just wanted to be in there because you could pretend that that was really your child,
Yeah.
that would be very detrimental. So, it kind of goes both ways. Oh, that's right, Charlotte. You did tell me the original is in Lilydale, New York, and it spawned one in Casadega, Florida, where the one you went to, and one in Indiana called Chesterfield, where you're going to go. Awesome! I'm
Mm.
looking forward to hearing about that.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, and also I noticed that you said you can turn your ashes into a diamond, even, which is very cool. I'm going to have some ashes made into glassworkers can incorporate it.
Mm.
You can also put them in bottles, which I love and wear as jewelry. I can make some of my own. I have a hi Elise. Elise is another one of our moderators. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
There's lots of things you can put it into pottery, and I think that those things are fantastic if you want that kind of memento and you have ashes that you can do that with. I think those are very, very good things. It's not, taking the place of, it's not like the person is hanging around there.
Yeah.
It's just for you to remember. Hi,
I think
Crystal.
it's also depending on each individual. Some people feel weirded out and don't want ashes or anything like that. And some people feel
Yeah,
very strongly about having that connection
yeah.
and keeping that piece
It's
of their
it's
loved one.
personal. It's
Yeah.
very, very it's a very personal thing. So should we move on a little bit, because I know
Yeah.
we are.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, so really what it comes down to is we have a new understanding of death, a new perspective of death based on our Neogenian understanding of reality. And so, as Neogenians, we understand that the eternal mind, or what some people refer to as the soul, can never die. And so, what we're experiencing, as we've said many times on our channel, we are experiencing the death of our physical selves, the avatar, and the death of our loved ones' physical selves, of their avatar. And so, because of the nature of an eternal Zeta, we will go through multiple life cycles and we will have multiple egos. And that's important and necessary for the evolution of that mind, of that Zeta. And so, a little bit earlier, we were talking about the connection with a Zeta and how much of a Zeta would remain behind. And so, the reason that I said I don't think that there would be a strong connection after that Zeta would move on after the death process and departing from that avatar is the same reason that a Zeta contains all of the memories from all of its past lives. None of that goes away. So after a person dies and they move on into the next stage of reality as a Zeta, departed from their physical self, all of the information is still contained within that Zeta and always will be. And so there, like Susan said, there is a possibility that we maybe could relocalize in our next lifetime or have similar relationships with other Zetas that we were connected to in this lifetime. That's completely possible. We don't know for sure,
I
but
really
I
think so,
I
but again,
I feel like it's
yeah,
likely,
yeah,
and it's possible that we already have.
yeah. Oh, again, I would, considering the countless, you know, localizations we've had, I would find it hard to believe that we didn't,
Yeah.
spend time
And
with
I
the
think
same
the
people.
beautiful part of this new understanding of reality and of death and all of that process is the understanding that death is not the end, especially for people who are just now coming to this information or just kind of realizing what we're saying when we talk about the Neogenian perspective. Death is not the end of us, but it's a process for a new beginning. And we talk about new beginnings a lot in the Neogenian system.
It means new beginning. So,
Yeah.
it's very, very apt. Um, One of the things that I think is really important to talk about too is the purpose that we have through each lifetime, and
Hmm.
the ongoing growth, our constant expansion, and what we're trying to do. Everything that we do moving forward, especially as Neogenians, is growth and consciousness expansion. And
Yeah.
we are trying to not only improve ourselves and self-actualize, but also for the collective. Now, it's not a matter of running to get to the end point, as we've mentioned before. It's the
Hmm.
process itself that's important. It's like stopping to smell the roses along your journey, right? It's the entire journey, not just the destination, that's important. So I think it's important to point out that we are just because we have continued existences, each a new one. We don't just say, oh well, I'm going to give up on this one, and this one's not important, and
Yeah,
just
I think that's a good point that you make, especially when talking about our purpose. I think it's really important to emphasize that even though we talk about death and the different processes that we go through and how we will live multiple lifetimes, that doesn't mean that this one is meaningless or that you should throw that purpose away. If you're
yeah,
having struggle in your life, and we've done live streams about overcoming struggle and the difference between struggle and
yeah.
suffering, if you're having that in your life, that doesn't mean that you should throw this lifetime and your purpose away. The eternal cycle doesn't mean that any lifetime is lesser than another, or you shouldn't just give up on it like that. You should treasure the lifetime that you have, because of what Susan is
Yeah.
saying. It's all about the process and the evolution.
And each one, is important. Think of it this way: even though we live many, many lifetimes, each one is unique. Each combination of your avatar and ego that you have for this lifetime, that's unique. You never get to be you again in this way.
That's true.
So that's important to remember. Just because you are going to continue on into other lives, you're never going to be this one again. So what you
Hmm.
can get out of this one is, unique to this lifetime. And I look at it as, and I mentioned this to you, Philip, that it's sort of like you're building a staircase,
Yeah.
and with all your lives, and each life is one stair that you are carving beautifully. And that stair is very, very important. It's not the whole thing, but it's every one is just as important. You need all of the stairs to get to the top.
Yeah. And if you were to try and leap a few stairs, there would be an incompleteness there.
There would be a problem. Yes, you'd fall. There'd be a problem. So, I think that
But I think also, since we're talking about our connection to the dead, since we're bringing in the Neogenian perspective on that, I think it's important to broaden your view of the subject, because, of course, we are connected with our loved ones. Of course, we have that strong bond. And we think about death in the immediate sense, about my family, my parents, my loved ones. But we need to also think about how we are connected to every mind in existence. And so we are connected with the collective. We are all part of the same system. We are all Zetas, and we are all part of the eternal cycle. So I think once you kind of have a full or better understanding of the Neogenian system, you can kind of look at reality in a different way that will give you more answers to understand this process that's happening, how we're interconnected, and why it's all important.
So yeah, and I'm going to go back now that we've kind of gone through everything. I'm going to go back to where we started with the people, uh, including us, who have the same questions: is are our loved ones still there, and where did they go? And we have talked about this. This has been the subject of live streams that Morg has done. People ask this all the time. So if you haven't gotten it completely yet from what we've been talking about, where did they go? You are a mind. That's Zeta, your soul, however you want to think of it, and you don't go anywhere. You always exist. You're just not in that body anymore. So if your loved one dies, they're just not in that body anymore, but they're still a mind that is still where it always was. which is not located in space-time. So they didn't leave, they didn't walk away. And are they still there? Yes, they're still there, but not in that form that you, because that's a very limiting one lifetime form, right? So the Neogenian material system is what informs you that you are so much more than just that. So no longer do we think of our loved ones as only that particular localization, incarnation, whatever you want to, however you want to say
I see Pooks left a comment that said removing the headset, which reminds me so much of that live stream we did talking about Donald Hoffman and removing the headset and being out of that worldview.
Yes. And that again, this is the point where one sort of switches back and forth between your avatar perspective and your Zetic perspective. So from the avatar perspective, that's when we're thinking of our loved one as dad, as grandma, right? That's we're not trying to say that does not hurt. There is no easy cure to get over the pain of losing someone. But with the Zetic perspective, which is what people who don't understand this material, that what they're missing is the Zeta perspective, which is that we aren't just that dad and grandma and your neighbor and your dog. They're not just that. They are much, much more. They're the entirety of their Zeta, which is includes all of the lifetimes, all of that information. So what it comes down to in terms of the comfort that we started with what people are looking for, it comes down to the understanding that we do have these individual lives. They do come with suffering, not unnecessary suffering. It comes with pain that we go through emotionally when we lose someone we love. However, when you go into the Zetic perspective, then suddenly you have a more removed overview picture, and that does bring comfort. It's not going to take away all the pain. You can't live in Zetic perspective. You need to come back to avatar mode in order to carry on with your life, but you always have access to that. And I think that is something that's really important for people to understand. So it's not this.
And we've done quite a few live streams on death. So if you're somebody that's more interested in the grief side, we've done a live stream on that. Or if you're interested in why does suffering exist, we talk about death a little bit in that one. If you go back through our live streams, there's quite a few that we've done on death, and we'll probably most definitely be talking about death some more. And just before we wrap this up, let's go back and look at some of the comments, because I know in the middle of the stream we were kind of having our discussion and not really looking quite as much, but
yeah, I've noticed.
I saw that there's some good ones.
Yeah, I've noticed a bunch of comments, and I love seeing you guys talking about the subject and engaging with it. The residual and this is something Elise said. Was listening a bit before I came into the chat, and Susan, your comment on the residual energy lingering as a type of echo was good and is an idea I've heard and thought about before. I'm glad. I don't think that I'm unique in that. I don't think I made that up myself. I have encountered that before. And it's just something that, again, can't prove, but I think it makes sense. As definitely having the person hanging around haunting forever does not make sense. That just doesn't.
And for anybody who's going to join us in the members only stream, we're going to be talking about ghosts, ghost hunting, Ouija, all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah. And we do have some fun stuff to talk about. So if you're not a member yet, that's coming up soon. And also, Elise made another comment, two of them, said, what if a person's egoic energy, frequency, or signature gets stored in the collective energy banks or Akashic record, and tapping into that part of the collective records could be like the channeling or feeling like you're in touch with a loved one or an ancestor? I'm not entirely sure, but that's kind of a uh, interesting idea of tapping into that and kind of having that connection with that
Yeah, that's
ego
very
or that
cool.
energy after the point. That's a really good question, and I'm not 100% sure on the answer with that. There's so much that we don't know, and there's so much that we can get to through reason and understanding the
Yeah.
concepts. And same with the death current, we can understand the concepts of that, but we're not 100% sure what happens
Ooh, sorry.
after a person's physical body dies. So there's a lot of things that we don't know yet. Maybe we'll know someday. But that's a really interesting question that you asked, Elise. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah. And
Pook says, "Are you going to play with a Ouija board?" I have one, but I don't know. We didn't plan on that,
I
so
wish
who
I'd kept
knows?
mine. I had
Come
one
to
from the
the member
70s.
stream, and who knows what
Yeah.
will happen.
Yeah.
Oh, and Fashida, thank you for gifting
That
one
was,
Neogenian
and Kate,
Oculus membership,
that was so
and
kind of
Kate
you.
got
Kate
it.
got it. I know Spectral was hoping, but that was very kind of you. We have such kind members.
Yeah.
You guys, this is like the best community. We love you guys. Um, and I think that this we probably will do more discussions on this topic. I think it's one of the ones that's really integral to what people think about a lot, and the understanding of us as a Zeta is something that I don't think can be over talked about, because it's understanding it is a process. Sort of
Hmm.
integrating it into you is a process. um, and I've said this before as well, that you learn the material, you get told to you, and so up here you're like, oh yes, okay, but you don't feel it. You go about your life still being very much living in avatar mode, where everybody is just this one particular lifetime, and then there's some sort of afterlife, and maybe we don't know what it is, or maybe you have a firm belief about it, but then you'll encounter the material again of, oh right, we're more than that. And the ideas of this one kind of heaven is not rational. So you encounter the material again, and maybe you try to remember it a little bit more or live with it a little bit more, but again it'll slip away from you, and you'll carry on with life, and you'll do the same thing over and over again. The more you think about it, the more you contemplate it, the more you will integrate it into yourself, and then it becomes your perspective. It just is. It's just there, and you don't see the world the way you used to. And when that
Yeah,
hits,
integrated and a part of you.
yes, it's just that now you are elevated in your consciousness. And that's when things get a little weird, because suddenly it's like you have this knowledge that you realize when you're interacting with people who don't have it. It's almost like you have to remind yourself, oh, this person is they haven't acquired
Yeah.
this yet. They haven't gotten here yet. And so you have to almost remember to explain some where you're coming from when you're talking. That's why we're always trying to get people to get to this very integrated level, because then we can converse with each other where it's right there, the information.
Yeah.
And you're,
And it takes a little bit of relation to people who are on that different level of understanding. Like if you were to talk to a Christian about death or anything like that, they
mhm,
would have very different
yes,
perspectives and very different answers than you would. They would say, well, when I get to heaven, all my loved ones will be waiting for me. And, we have a very different understanding of the process of death and the process that a Zeta goes through. And to me, thinking of heaven, it's kind of like a holding tank for all of your loved ones, and you're
yeah,
just there
yeah,
eternally, forever
yeah,
afterwards. And
yeah.
it seems very weird to me. And
It,
I grew up Christian. So you kind of have to, when you're talking to other people, you have to relate to them in a way where you know where they're coming from, but you have to also be able to explain, the Neogenian concepts to them in a way that they would understand
if they're receptive to it,
if they are
I
receptive to it.
I I tend to forget. I'm so used to thinking this way that I
Hmm.
have a hard time, relating to that. And I was never Christian, so I before this, I was just sort of searching for the thing that made sense to me, that was rational. And I just sort of held lots of different little bits of things I found interesting floating around here, but nothing that I really grabbed onto, because nothing made perfect sense until I encountered this material. So anyway, let's go back and read some more comments real quick, because I just realized we are getting really close. Hi, Kate.
Yeah, and just one more time, thank you to anybody who likes and shares this video. Thank you to the people who did super chat. You don't have to do that. We love you guys as a community, and it's nice just having you here to talk with us. And we know that you guys are interested in these topics. So thank you for joining us here today. And we're going to read a couple more comments before we go. But I just wanted to emphasize that we do appreciate you guys so much. And also thank you to our moderators, Jan, Mark, and Elise. You guys really make it special.
Yeah, I'm glad for our Saturdays here. I see a comment from JP Brooks a little earlier up that says, "Good evening, everyone. I admit to having a lot of questions about death and the afterlife that I am still struggling to answer." JP, I hope you're coming to the members, and I hope you bring your questions, because that's kind of what we set aside for the talk time. Again, anybody who isn't a member, don't worry, because we will be doing more live streams, I'm sure, on this topic, and where we'll have more time to actually talk, engage with the questions and comments. So please come back for that. Hopefully, I'm just going to try to wrap this up real quick. Hopefully we're back on schedule. I had terrible computer problems, so I was out of commission there for a couple of weeks. I kept having to delay the live streams, but we're hoping to go back to twice a month, and at least, and get some videos out. That's in the works. We have been working on a lot of projects, so that's keeping us busy. But we missed you guys, and we're happy to be back finally, at least on the end of the month. We have a couple other things that we're going to say in the members, just and
some fun stuff.
Yeah, just fun things. Nothing super important. And
do you already have the link in the community board? That's where they can find it.
I think I posted it on the community board. Let me know. It should be there. And so hopefully everybody is gonna, or a lot of people will come over there. And
Fashida says, is the other stream right after? We usually take like a quick 10 or 15-minute break.
Oh, not even.
Or if not even,
we'll be in. We'll be in really soon.
Yeah.
And JP, no problem. I hope you will be there, and please bring your questions, because that's going to give us the opportunity to talk about it. So, I mean, just wrapping up, this is, I mean, death and afterlife is very important to people, and has been all throughout the ages. I don't see it disappearing anytime soon.
And if you guys would like to see more topics like this one, put some tricycles in the chat or something, just to kind of close out the public stream.
And one of the things we're going to ask in the members is also for some upcoming topic ideas. We have some. We want to run them by you. So hi, Cassidy. Yeah, Butterfingers. Oh, I'm going to do it's so funny. Let me do my picture for Cassidy.
Lots of tricycles, so it's good. We're glad that you guys enjoyed it.
There's Quokka.
Oh yes, there's
Quokka.
What's his name again? Oculus the Quoculus.
I think that was Kate who came up with that name. Kate and Mark together.
Yep, I believe it was a dual effort.
I believe I'm right on that. So
Oculus the Quoculus.
Oculus the Quoculus. And the meaning behind him is that he is our PSR, principle of sufficient reason. There has to be one. If a quokka shows up in your living room, there has to be a sufficient reason how he got there. He didn't just pop out of nothing. And the drawing that Pooks did of Oculus, where he's holding a Rubik's Cube, is also symbolic, because the Rubik's Cube is the individual basically solving itself, and the collective solving itself. So we're individual pieces of a larger whole. And with that, I think we're going to sign off and meet
Okay.
you guys in the members. Thank you very much for coming.
Yes, thank you, everybody. It was nice to see all of you.
And hopefully in a couple weeks, we will be planning another one. But again, our time slot is always Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So
Yeah.
if we're on, it will be at that time slot. Okay. Good night, everybody. And
Good night, everybody.
we'll see members in the member stream. So I have to just hop over here. Bye.